Hi, good evening, and welcome to Athens City Council. Tonight is Monday, November 17th, 2014. This is a regular session of council. I am sitting in as President Pro Tem. Jim Sands is still on medical leave. We do have a quorum this evening with all members present. Disposition of minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes from the regular session held November 3rd, 2014?
I move to accept the minutes from November 3rd.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the regular session minutes from November 3rd signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The minutes have been accepted. At this point in our meeting, we have an opportunity for communications. Is there communications from council members?
I think a lot of us will be talking on the same topic, but thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to give a large thank you to all of those who responded Sunday morning to the large fire that took place here in Athens. First and foremost, our police department, as well as our fire department, police department literally going door to door at 4 in the morning, but also our fire department, which did an amazing job. I also want to thank all the other departments that arrived. 6 other departments showed up. There were 60 firefighters total coming to aid and assist. I think our mutual agreement that we have with other cities, other fire departments, is testament last Sunday night, or Sunday, to the fact that it's a system that's working and working well. I also want to thank all the emergency responders, all the EMS individuals, the American Red Cross. And I also want to give a large thank you to all of our uptown, our business community in general, for really coming forward and providing food and water, even providing lumber for starting to shore up some of the storefronts, the glass windows and whatnot, and to the citizens of Athens. I think there's been a huge outcry, a positive, supportive outcry from the community telling our business owners who lost their businesses over the weekend to stay strong and to rebuild and to make our community even stronger. Just a terribly devastating day, but also through the lens of someone watching a community really, really pull together and support each other. That was a major upshot to that whole catastrophic event.
Member Patterson and I attended a meeting today at 2. The mayor was there as well, and this was pretty much filled with business owners and property owners. And they were all talking and strategizing how to support each other, how to gain the support from the community, how to help the employees who are out of work. It was a good beginning.
And along those lines, I believe there are a couple of resources and opportunities available to make those donations. I think some can be linked through Facebook or other social media. It is huge. Also, again, I think we're really lucky to live in a community where there has been so much support for the students as well. President McDavis and Dean Jenny Hall-Jones really stepping up and offering a lot to the students, which makes me proud to be a Bobcat. Any other comments from council? Reports and communications from other elected officials. Mayor Weil.
I believe in terms of fire incident, you said it well. I would mention, I think there was a meeting at 5 o'clock at Arts West too with some of the business owners. I think they're trying to put together like a fundraising through social networking, mostly to cover the people who have lost employment, the businesses that suffered damage there. I believe at the 2 o'clock meeting, the owner of Jackie O said, I've got employees who could use jobs if anybody needs them. The other thing I mentioned struck me, the previous chief, Chief Troxel, always used to be an advocate for fire safety, and he would always take the worst case scenario. And I realized, Sunday when you're looking at that, you realize that the worst case scenario could happen. We were lucky in one sense, no loss of life. We lost some buildings, but the fact is that, it is a serious, event in that sense. So again, just to to follow through with what Member Patterson says, is that we thank all the volunteer forces that came in place. I think about 60 members. They worked long and hard, longer and harder than I do. And I have to remind myself of that too. I mean, as much as I'm supposed to be the head honcho, they're the ones who have the expertise and take the risks, both in the police and fire departments and the neighboring people took out, woke up 4 o'clock in the morning to be here when they don't have to be, Let's see, on other notes, lighter notes, I guess, there's a boil order on East State Street, I see, between 7:39 and 7:43 on the odd sides. It just came through at 6 o'clock, that's why I mentioned it, since everybody might go home in that small range and start cooking up. I'd also like to mention we have a celebrity in the audience from the Press Club of Cleveland there. Tom Sudis has been awarded Hall of Famer. Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm sure he doesn't like the fact I wasted good government time on that. And on that note, I'll cease.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. Law Director Lang, any announcements?
I don't think I can really say any better what's already been said here this evening other than just to say thank you.
Auditor Heck, any?
I do have a couple things tonight, thank you. One, and I sent some emails out today, but kind of late today to council and the mayor. I will be heading to Columbus tomorrow afternoon with our income tax administrator, Tina Timberman. She will be providing testimony to the House Ways and Means Committee regarding this ongoing issue with the uniform tax, SB 5, where it is now. And it's been a difficult haul, but it's right at the top of their list to deal with during lame duck. So how they're going to take a 25-page tax law code and turn it into a 127-page code and think it's going to be easier for people to follow is beyond me, but we're still fighting the battle. So we'll be up there tomorrow afternoon and well into the evening, I'm sure. And then I do have one other thing to share with you. I don't always share this, but I thought I would. I got this last Wednesday from the State Auditor's Office, and I've gotten these before. Dear Ms. Hecht, congratulations. Based upon your recently completed financial audit, it gives me great pleasure to inform you that the City of Athens has received the Auditor of State Award. Clean and accurate record keeping are the foundation for good government, and the taxpayers can take pride in your commitment to accountability. The Auditor of State Award is given to those entities that file timely financial reports in accordance with GAAP, as well as receive a clean audit report. The clean audit report means that your financial audit did not contain findings for recovery, material citations, material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, single audit findings, or any question costs. Enclosed is your certificate for your display. Congratulations again. However, one of the reasons I wanted to read that is to point out that it's not just me. I do that with the people in my office, with the cooperation with the mayor, all the other administrators, department heads, council, everybody that works with me to make sure that our bookkeeping is what it should be. So thank you.
And I would like to point out this is the first time in many years we had an audit through the state. And usually I look at it as a new dance with a new entity, and therefore I'm surprised we didn't have any missteps.
I thought they would be a little bit tougher than our IPAs, our independent public accountants that we've had for the last 10 years. It took longer. They spend more time here, and they're very thorough. However, we did not have obviously any serious issues. And as I said, we've been getting these for several years. But
In terms of the uniform tax presentation, I think that's where you're going tomorrow, you said?
yes.
Can you reiterate how much we expect to lose if that passes?
Well,
I think Tina was giving us estimates.
it depends on there's a lot of different things. One of the big issues is the net operating loss carry forward. And we don't have one at all now, and some cities do. They might have 2, they might have 5, they might have 1. We don't have one. We expect to lose about $60,000 a year on that. What Tina is going to, they have different people, mostly tax administrators from around the state, testifying tomorrow. And so her testimony is going to be on the 12-day rule that will be changed to a 20-day rule. And part of the issue with that, and they've added some other things onto that. So, and I can send you her report, which will explain some of it. But basically, we expect to lose about $56,000 a year on that one. That will allow people who don't live in the city or their business is not in the city to come in and work 20 days rather than 12, which, we aren't, overly upset about that, but there's some other rules about it. If you make less than $500,000 a year, then you don't have to pay taxes at all. And so just within a 20-mile radius of businesses in the county who do business in Athens, we would lose quite a bit of money. And it also would be another incentive for businesses who are small, locally owned business to move outside the city limits, even though their main source of revenue would be business in the city limits. So, and there are several other things that will be brought up tomorrow, but those are just two examples.
Okay. And again, the concern is the burden will be on us and the loss of revenue in general. I was talking to another mayor last week, and he was saying about $200,000 coming off the top of his.
Oh, sure, yeah, ours will be more than those two put together also. Yeah.
And again, he's a guesstimate, had a guesstimate on it.
Right. Well, those two that I gave you, Tina's done a lot of research, and we're pretty sure about those. Mm-hmm. Wish us luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Auditor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Moving on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 9914. An ordinance amending Ordinance 8313, establishing fees as required by the Athens City Code. This is introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 99-14.
Second.
Thank you. This ordinance is an ordinance in which the permit fees will be increasing. Again, they haven't increased for many years, and the increases are small, between $5 and $10 increases for the different iterations of the rental permit fees, as well as adjusting the citations, which also falls in the same ordinance, for the garbage and rubbish violation fees, which has been discussed extensively in the past.
Thank you. Any comments, council or public? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 99-14. All those in favor of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 105-14, an ordinance authorizing the auditor to reduce 2014 year-end appropriations, and this is introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 10514.
Second.
And the purpose of this ordinance is to authorize the auditor to reduce appropriations so that we have adequate resources in the different accounts between now and the end of the year, and so we can fully utilize the funds that we have available for city operations.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 105-14. All those in favor of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 106-14, an ordinance accepting the donation by the Ransom family of a vacant lot located on Graham Drive to remain as undeveloped land. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt 106-14.
Second.
We've talked about this several times. It's an honor that somebody, family, wants to donate land to the city. This is old family land for the Ransom family. And the city, I feel, can do it justice. This, along with other parcels that have been donated by various members of the community of Athens helps to keep our city green and clean. So I say thank you to the Ransom family.
Thank you, Member Fall. Any questions, comments? Mayor Weil?
Again, you'll notice that the requirement is that it stays, how did it, remain undeveloped. So I think that's a good thing. And again, thank you for this family for the donation.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. Any other comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 106-14. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 107-14, an ordinance authorizing engineering services for the depot lift station, which is project number 286. This is introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 107-14.
Second.
Thank you. Again, this is an ordinance to appropriate $50,000 from the sewer debt fund, 758, and transferring it to the sewer fund to begin the engineering of the depot lift station.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 107-14. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 108-14, an ordinance authorizing funds for engineering services for the North Congress Street Sanitary Sewer, which is project number 289. Again, this is introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you again, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 108-14.
Second.
Thank you. Again, another much-needed appropriation, this one for $45,000 being transferred from the sewer debt fund into the sewer fund for, to begin engineering services on the North Congress sanitary sewer.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I believe, Mayor Weil, if I recall correctly, this is a relatively old, very old system.
Yes, it is. It needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Any comments?
And this is just a starting point, really. This is just for the study. Just getting more money down the road.
Thank you.
Down the sewer.
Down the sewer. I hope not.
So we have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 108-14. All those in favor of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Now we're moving on to ordinances for second reading. These have already been discussed or described and shared with the public, but we will reread them. Ordinances for second reading beginning with 89-14, an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 5, Public Utilities, Chapter 5.02, Garbage and Rubbish, Section 5.02.03, Preparation and Storage, introduced by Councilmember Fall. Any comments? Any public comments? Moving on to ordinance 109-14, an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 9.15, Parks, Open Spaces, and Nature Preserves, Section 9.15.02, Use of Tobacco, Tobacco Products, or Tobacco Derivatives Prohibited, and Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.07, Miscellaneous Offenses, Section 13.07.06, Littering Public Ways. And this was introduced by Councilmember Patterson. Any questions or comments? Ordinances for first reading. 113-14, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $650,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the cost of improvements to this municipality's wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is part of one of our largest projects going on in the city right now for the improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. It's what's called the wet side of the sewer treatment. This particular ordinance is for part of the debt that was incurred for the first design of that wastewater treatment plant. It was begun years ago, back when Councilmember Bain and others were still here, and she helped a lot with getting us ready to move forward with this, as did Director of Public Works Andy Stone. So we owed $750,000 on it, and this year, and paying down part of it, and then what we're doing is renewing a note for $650,000 worth of that debt for the design feature of the plant.
And can you remind us how much interest it will be?
0.30.
And it's from a local bank.
It is.
Yep.
From a
Been
local
very,
bank.
very good to us.
Excellent.
A great community partner, and we really want to.
It is. Then they've been that way for a long time, and our bond counsel in Columbus can't say enough about, they give us the top rates. We have a good credit rating, but we're not the top, and those are the rates they give us.
Right.
So we have a very good working relationship with them.
I very much appreciate it.
We do. Can I add one other thing? This will need to be suspended, this and the next one, on second reading, because it's due December 13th.
Thank you, Auditor. Thank you, Member Fall. Thank you, Member Nicely. Any other comments? Moving on to Ordinance 114-14, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $150,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of acquiring a new fire truck and related equipment and declaring an emergency, again introduced by Councilmember Nicely.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, part of a long-term investment in city's infrastructure. The ladder equipment truck begun several years ago, $1.2 million purchase by the city, so we borrowed money, and we're making a payment, and the $150,000 is the amount of the note that we're renewing on this, once again at the lower interest rate. I noticed that the payment, I believe, on this is due December 12th, so we also need to suspend on the second reading in order to get this passed in time. Okay.
Thank you, Member Nicely. Any comments? Moving on to Ordinance 115-14, an ordinance authorizing renewal of a stop-loss medical insurance contract and declaring an emergency, presented by Councilmember Nicely.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we consider this ordinance under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The purpose for this being, although we did just receive a notice on November 10th about the final amount for this stop-loss, we are needing to pass the ordinance before November 21st, or they will have to give a new quote, and we'll have to go through the whole process over again.
Thank you. So we have a motion to suspend the rules and a second, and voting on just suspension of the rules. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance is currently under suspension of the rules.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 115-14.
Second?
And what this does, this particular ordinance renews a contract with United Healthcare, and that is the carrier that assists the City of Athens with their self-insurance program for medical and prescription for the employees. We haven't been given a rate quote, and the reason that the ordinance refers to stop-loss medical insurance is that there is a deductible set at $110,000 per any one particular claim. So it's like an additional insurance policy that the city pays in case there would be a particular large claim. What we're doing this year is renewing at the rate that it was renewed at last year, $110,000 deductible on this. And so this will continue for the period beginning January 1 and then in operation for 12 months for that renewal. This is, I might note, an increase of 8.4 for the stop loss, 8.4% overall for the stop loss and the medical and the prescription. It's 4.5 overall, which is less than national averages for increases in insurance. So.
Thank you, Member Nicely. Is there questions or comments on this ordinance? Auditor or Mayor?
Hasn't changed significantly since last year, except the increase of rates. That's what's to be expected, but it's, as I say, it's less than the state or the national average.
Thank you. Auditor Hecht.
I would add one thing, in that our HR director, Jennifer Galbraith, is doing a one-year contract on this because we don't know what kind of changes there might be as far as compliance with this, with the Affordable Care Act, and changes that might take place in the next year or so. 1 year at a time.
Thank you. Any other comments? We do have a motion and a second to accept ordinance 11514. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinance 116-14, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA federal local LET project agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for construction of a bike path from Armitage to Columbus Road, and this is project number 271, and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was discussed at length in committee last week, sorry. And I think the important things to note here is that the federal funds, we were awarded these funds approximately 4 years ago, is when that federal grant came in. But most recently, and then the design and the planning has been going on for that period of time while we awaited more funds. And the state just awarded us $550,000 to top us up there to meet the 20%. So we're moving in that direction. So the city will have the rest of that in terms of the construction costs. And I believe, as soon as we pass this, I believe they're beginning to maybe move some dirt and move things around.
I think they still have to do some more design work, but again, you saw last week the county commissioners gave them an easement.
Right.
So
right.
they're working on bits and pieces like that. And this just gives us authority to run the operation because we have the wherewithal to do that.
And some people may have be asking why the cost is significant. There is a lot of design work, and it's going through wetlands and over a river. There's a bridge to be built. So,
Any other questions or comments regarding the ordinance? Thank you. Moving on to ordinance 117-14, an ordinance amending the 2014 appropriation ordinance and authorizing interfund transfers. This is introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we consider this ordinance under the suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason for this being is that we do have several expenses relating to operating costs, such as electricity for streetlights that are due between now and the end of the year.
Thank you, Member Nisley. So, considering suspension only, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of suspending ordinance 117-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance is under suspension of the rules.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of ordinance 117-14. This particular ordinance, the details of which we covered last week, has several different parts. Some of them are small amounts, some of them are larger. The smallest amount being $5. This was because we have some interest due on our community center debt fund, and there was a rounding error in the time that we made the last payment, so we need to appropriate another additional $5 to cover that interest. The second item is $9,713.50, and this is to the East State Street Debt Fund, and this has to do with our tax incremental financing and transfer of those monies. And then we have $80,000 from the sewer debt fund, and that will be coming into sewer to cover expenses for electric for the additional rest of the year. And I do understand from some of our discussions we'll probably be budgeting a little bit more per month just based on our past experience this year on the costs with that. And then we have $50,000 for general funds, lands and building. And this is account number 220, and these are for our traffic lights.
No, I think lands and buildings actually for the unmetered street lights.
Street lights,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Thank you for the correction. And then we have the,
Oh, wait a
another
second, the 220 is it?
50,000 is the, are the street, or the,
The 220 is traffic lights, the 112 is lands and buildings, that's
Thank
the street lights.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I flipped them.
that's okay. And then we have an interfund transfer of the $80,000 from the sewer debt fund to the sewer fund to be able to pay the expenses for these sewer costs for the electric. And then the $9,713.50 from the East State Street debt fund to the tax incremental financing, the TIF fund, which was mentioned earlier. And then the $80,000 to the sewer fund, appropriating that so that we can pay the electric expenses. Auditor Hecht?
I was just going to point out that in Section 2, as you said, we have two transfers of money, and then the two $50,000 amounts in streets and lands and buildings it's just a decreasing and increasing from the 100s into the 2 and 300s. So that's no new appropriation either, really, out of the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Auditor. Thank you, Member Nicely. Any other questions or comments regarding Ordinance 11714? We have a motion to adopt the ordinance and a second. All those in favor of adopting Ordinance 117-14, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 118-14, an ordinance to stop imposition of the community center income tax levy authorized by Ordinance 137-95, effective January 1st, 2016, and amending Athens City Code Title 15, Chapter 15.01, Income Tax, Section 15.01.03, Imposition of Tax, introduced by all members of council. Who would like to speak on this evening?
I can start with an explanation of
Sure.
it.
Thank you, Member Nicely.
Earlier this year, we had an ordinance that approved placing on the ballot a proposal for an income tax of 0.1% for arts, parks, and recreation, for construction of a new swimming pool, but also equally as important, accessibility in all the city parks, and upgrading equipment and general accessibility to all the park areas. And we did pass a resolution several weeks ago saying if the ballot was approved on the levy, that what we would do is stop collection, or what in this case, in this ordinance, is referred to as imposition, but it's stopping collecting of the income tax on the old community center debt of the 0.1% for that 1 year where there was an overlap, and that would be beginning January 1, 2016. So that's what this particular ordinance does. It stops the collection of the old community center debt. So that's the old ordinance that we referred to, the 13795. That was the, when it was approved for the community center construction. And we will be then beginning collection for the new income tax levy on January 1, and this one stops. The two conditions on this is that if there are any delinquent taxes, that we will be able to collect income tax on the delinquent tax, and also acknowledging that sometimes that income tax, the monies coming in for that come in after January 1. So the auditor's office will be helping us with the timely collection.
Try.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any other questions or comments on this ordinance? Appreciate the description. None? Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? Moving on to ordinance 119-14, an ordinance authorizing the city auditor to deposit 70% of the transient guest tax revenue collected from January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2017 into the tourism fund. Introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. The transient guest tax is defined by Ohio Revised Code, and it's levied in Athens County at an amount of 6%. So when somebody rents a hotel room or takes a hotel room for the night, you'll often see a 6% tax on top of that. That 6% tax is split between the city and the county. So we get a fair amount of money per year. In fact, it's up 11% this year. Total revenue so far in 2014 is about $350,000 for the city. The minimum obligation when we bring that in is that 50% of it be spent on tourism, and that's defined by Ohio Revised Code. And we used that money in the past, and we still do, to pay for two different activities with different organizations, one the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Economic Development Council. What we found in the previous years was that when we were doing it at the 50% split, we would get to a certain point in the year, about the third quarter, and we'd say, oh, we have another payment due. We've had only 50% going into for tourism activities. We now need to make a major appropriation over to the correct account for tourism. So it used to be that 50-50 split. What we did several years ago is split it and said that it would be a 70-30 split until we reached our obligations needing to pay for the tourism. What this particular ordinance does is renews that 70-30 split, the revised split, for another 2 years, from January 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2017. The split appears to have been working. Right now we have a balance of $186.33. That seems to be right on target. So our method is working. We'd like to renew that for another 2 years. We think that's a prudent split on the taxes to adequately cover our obligations for tourism activities in the city.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments?
No, good explanation as any. That works. No, it's right. You know.
It was very good. Thank you for that.
It gets pretty convoluted there, but at the same time, it's worth the effort. As you can see, it's going up, and that's the incentive for the Tourism Bureau to be out there, you know, selling us as a city.
Thank you, Mayor Wah. Any public comments on the ordinance? If none, we're moving beyond the ordinance to announcements and other business. Council members, any announcements or other business?
We have a guest here tonight who will talk about the composting programs that is going on. Mr. Ray Laird is here. You want to come up and take the podium? And I assume that...
Is that working? The PowerPoint thing?
I have no idea. Did you go? There it is, right there.
Yeah, there you go.
It's working.
Kind of a preamble to this. Mr. Laird came before council several months ago.
July, maybe.
July.
Or early in the summer, yeah.
But it was to introduce the possibility of having a pilot study to look at local composting at the residential level. And so this is a follow-up with the results of how that pilot program went.
You guys must know how to work this, I don't. How do you manipulate it? When there's
Scott, are you available to assist us? Thank you.
Yeah. You know? Oh, the guy in there.
Arrow key.
Arrow keys at the bottom of the keyboard.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's the cover letter that was sent out. Just want to pass these out. Just this is, these are some articles that you may want to read later. These have to do with the national trend of laws being passed on the issue. And this is a copy of the questionnaire that was passed, that was emailed afterwards.
It's not heated.
Arrow, huh?
This should be like 4 little arrows to the bottom right, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Push one, probably toggle it sideways, the 2 horizontal arrows. Try that and see what happens. There you go.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
All right. This is too easy.
Wait till you
Okay.
get it jammed, that's say so.
All right. I'd like to first thank everybody for allowing me to come speak tonight. I know from the market, Steve and Jennifer and Kent, sometimes Kent, mostly you guys, and see you down there a lot. So this is a short presentation on the results of the pilot project that I conducted this past summer for your, for the, like Mayor was saying, or you were saying. I met with you folks in the spring, and we agreed that I could organize a project, and then by May I'd chosen 15 streets across the east side, far east side, and west side neighborhoods of Athens, and using the auditor's website, I located about 500 addresses of the residents, sent out that letter that you have there, very simple letter, just asking for who's interested, and about 40 people responded over the course of the next month or so, either from neighbors who had said, "Hey, you got to do this," you know, or from members at the market that I knew that lived in those streets. I said, "Hey, I'll give you 4 months free if you participate." So a bunch of those did. So I wound up finally with about 60 people. And although there were a few delays, we started on the morning of the Thursday, the May 29th, and went for 15 weeks, and then the Thursday after the holiday, which I'd forgotten about the trash day being the next day. And so a lot of folks didn't put their bucket out. And I found out later that when they brought to the market, oh yeah, because of the trash day. So that's why some of the graphs here say 14 weeks, it was really 15 weeks. So, and then a few weeks later, I emailed the questionnaire, and you have a copy of that. And we'll go through, it was also the data that came from the collections, and then the data that came from the questionnaire. And okay, next slide. That's a typical picture at the end of about 10:30, a typical Thursday during the summer, of what my car looked like after collecting all the bags, and me collecting a bucket. And the system was pretty simple. Each person was given one of these. This happened to be given free by the folks who sell the bags. That's why you'll see in the middle of this thing that a lot of folks suggested a better countertop because it's pretty cheap. And it's a hassle using the bag. But they were given that in 50 bags, and they were given one of these buckets. And the bucket simply has a label, has yeses and nos, so it made it easy for anybody to know what to put in it, or in the bags. And that's how it started. And I go out there every Thursday, and it took about 2 hours. And I would just have a route, and ended up on Morris Street, I think it was, or Central, over on the far west side, near your area. And I would go and I had to go weigh per your instructions, Mayor, go weigh the total car to see what the difference was, weigh it before and weigh it after. And so it was pretty simple, really, the whole process. And so the rest of this presentation will be an outline of like I said, the data, what was collected, and then the results of the questionnaire to see what kind of response we got and what the feelings were of the people who participated. And first graph shows the amount of total amount compost each week. As the number of participants increased, of course, the number gradually went up to about 400 pounds. And the surprising thing one of the surprises was that the average weight was, I thought, was pretty high. As it turned out, it, as we'll see later, is about the average. The average for the country is about 30% of the waste stream. And that's what this happened to be at 8 pounds. And the next slide is this is a good indication of the activity, but most folks participated. This is over 90% week to week to week as the numbers increased. There were folks who were on vacation, they didn't count each week, but the folks who either forgot or did it every other week was minimized. And so most folks put their buckets out every time they could. So it worked out real well. And you can see that at the very end, it was very steady week to week. The next 5 slides has to do with the questionnaire, and that was passed out. And this was, to me, the most surprising results or findings, was that most of the folks who signed on had never done this before. I would have thought the direct opposite, but most folks had never participated in a program like this, which showed to me that there was a lot of interest, a lot of unregistered interest in the idea. There was a series in the questionnaire. You'll see that I posed the question about this issue in a variety of ways so as to kind of convey some logic to the question versus just would you pay more or less versus here maybe what you want to think about is that and this is what a lot of people week to week or as I talk to them, they didn't really think about this issue, which is if this wasn't in place, you're still paying right now. Most folks in Athens are paying for this stuff to be hauled away. It's called trash. It's being landfilled. So right now they're paying for it. And so the question is, if it was diverted, would you be willing to pay about the same, or is it less or more? And most people, the vast majority, over 90%, indicated they would be willing to pay the same or slightly more, based on the logic of the questions, having read what happens to it, so forth and so on. And there's cost savings for the city and less landfill costs and so forth. And so most are interested in doing it, and they would do so at about the same or slightly more than what they're paying for now. Of course, because these are all volunteers, almost everybody says, "Sure, let's do it for the long term." And this question was they were able to indicate a variety of reasons, and many answered several of them. So you can see there that landfills are getting filled up, better for the environment, less emissions. As most of you know, the emissions that result from landfilling organics is like 30 times more potential dangerous than from carbon dioxide. It's really dangerous stuff, the stuff that comes out of the ground from the landfills. And the other thing was the one that has the most of response was that diverting food waste is the same as other recycling. It's just a matter of habit. And you'll see later on that was one of the issues that people had the hardest time getting into. But once they did, it's done. Okay, and that's really one of the bottom lines is that it really is about one, education, why we should, and then getting people to make it easy for them to do it. But education is the key. Okay. Biggest challenges down at the bottom. It shows remember to put the bucket out for some folks, and initially get into the habit of it. But once they did, then it becomes quite easy. And the other thing which can be addressed with some techniques, the odor coming from the large container, the collection bucket, that can be remedied by either a quick spray or, in many cases, I was looking at a video last night about putting carbon, some type of either craft bag, a Kroger craft bag. They had a little YouTube thing on how to take a piece of newspaper, Athens News, and fold in certain ways to make a cup that drops into the bucket. Again, the carbon source that absorbs smell and the moisture. So that worked out real well. Ideas on how to improve, again, relate to a better countertop bin. I brought, that's kind of like a Volkswagen there. That's Cadillac. It's like 4 times the cost. But this is designed real nice. And looking at other programs around the country, like Portland or Portland, Oregon, or the folks out west that are doing this already, they do supply a better bucket. So, that's part of the thinking process, is how do you get people to want to do it? Well, again, education and make it easy for them to do. And they also indicate the elimination of having to use the bags was too costly. And then there's just some demographics, where are they coming from? Are they older folks, retired, students, that type of thing? And this is, again, done on the far east side, and the west side. So there weren't any students, per se. There were a few, but most, west side, there were more than the other places. Most of them were just, retired folks or folks with families and two-income household professional type folks. And so that's something to keep in mind as far as would the city be interested in having it happen. Findings from the questionnaire. Even though most participants had not diverted food scraps before, the majority made it a habit after 6 to 8 weeks. The average weight of the bucket per week was about the average for the country, which is about 30%. Okay. Most folks would be willing to pay for it, either the same or slightly more. And convenience issues was, again, the clean bucket. There's a place it's called Highfields in Vermont, and they have a program. And they actually have a truck that goes around, and they have some sort of container that sprays out the can and sets it back down. So they recycle some sort of a bin in there, a bucket in there, a barrel that has this water thing. It's quick spray and then set it out. That takes care of that issue. Keep in mind that the folks who participated, of course, were volunteers, and so they were interested to begin with, as far as the question of whether the city would be, city residents across the city would be interested in doing this. Keep that in mind. Rural Action actually did this PowerPoint for me, and they provided this graphic in terms of what would happen if it was done across the city, how many tons of emissions you would divert, and what that equals in terms of electricity gallons or pounds of coal burn. So it's pretty dramatic. This is a graphic on current costs for the city, for the residents. And some of you may ask, well, you have this compost exchange place nearby, and how much would it be able to take the compostables? And the answer is yes, currently, and we're looking to expand by about 50% the space that we have. Down at the bottom right is a big number that you might want to look at. Tipping fees currently that the city, or I guess it's the recycling folks pay, is 33 to 35. I couldn't find it exactly. She wouldn't tell me. But 41 is what consumers pay. 33 to 35 was a range in which they pay. And the cost that we charge to take organics is 23. So there's a per ton, $12 to $14 per ton savings by going to a facility like ours that's nearby. Summary and suggestions. In my opinion, the facts indicate that the pilot project was a pretty good success. High participation rate and diversion rate, and substantial potential to realize a substantial decrease in landfill cost. The residential collection of the materials at curbside is only one of several challenges facing the region, like most regions, in terms of diverting food waste away from the landfills. Besides the neighborhood pickup program, the region needs to look at restaurants, schools, hospitals, businesses, and the many in this town, the large apartment complexes that generate a lot of waste. As I mentioned before, the folder that I brought has those articles about the laws. This is something that you need to consider, is that 10 years from now, almost everybody will be doing this. The laws are just going to be writing the laws. Massachusetts has a new one. California has. They're all going to write laws that say You can't put it in the landfill anymore. That's coming. And so the need is to get ahead of the curve, in my opinion. The big issue is, like I mentioned before, that education seems to be the key. Once you indicate to people, in layman's terms, why we should do this, most folks then say, well, make it easy for me. Make it convenient, and I will, because I know we should. And make the cost not too high. Yeah. And it's not rocket science, it's this whole idea. And again, in my opinion, having operated this business for a couple of years now, the most efficient way to do this is not to have somebody like myself do it with a third truck, which is the city doesn't want to do. They don't want to have more trucks in the road. Over in Ireland and Europe, they have one truck that gets everything, one pass, and it's a specialized truck, not real cheap either. But that's probably the issue with most cities, is that it's going to cost some money to kind of evolve into this collection thing. But it should, in my opinion, it should be done by the folks who do it now. And the key to that is having, like you have here, you have a licensed Class 2 facility located nearby that you can easily bring it to, thereby keeping your transportation costs low, which is key to the whole thing. And to end, I would like to suggest that next step might be to sit down and work with the city for a potential rollout in 2015. As just one thought, that truck there is what they use up in Vermont. Basically a 6 cubic yard bin that has the yellow thing there is a tote lifter, which if you have industrial size, 32, 64 gallon things, it's able to, right on top. And so those things are out there, the piece of equipment for small cities. Usually that's a small city kind of a truck. In large cities they have bigger capacity, bigger needs. But in any case, and to sum up, one of the reasons I moved up to Athens was that, like it says here, it's a dynamic hub of innovations in food and, education. It's got OU here and all these neat things, the farmer's market. It's just a crazy place to be. It's a great town. And, why not show the rest of the state how it's done? And but I thank you for allowing me to speak. And as far as other suggestions, that's basically, I think the best way to go is to have the folks who do it now do this as well, versus having somebody else, and work together to make it happen. Questions? Yeah.
I just one, the fees. As you say, people are already paying one fee to have it just landfill. So are you suggesting now there'll be an additional fee on top of that for them to compost?
Not at all. In the cities that are doing a curbside, they actually offer an incentive. Some reduce the fee, they split it, that if you participate, you're going to pay so much for trash and you're going to pay so much for the organics. And so that's what the question got to, is that what would you expect to pay? Because now I've got less trash. So why should my fee be the same if it's less trash? So, but because it's all being done by the same service, there is the separation issue. There's an expense, their cost to divert. But still, if you make it efficient, you can make it in one pass or two passes like you do now. But there's a diversion thing, and the savings, that's the real question, is there how much is the savings and what's it going to cost? And to see, maybe it might cost less because of the savings. It's a matter of doing the study on a large scale.
The thing with our garbage collection right now, the reason that you have one fee fits all is because it costs the city just as much to pick up 1 pound of garbage as it does 25. Okay, so even though you say, well, I don't have much, it still costs a truck,
it's a
bring
fix.
it in, and haul it away.
Right.
So that's why you're paying for it.
Right.
Okay, so how then can I divert that fee, which is costing us just to collect the ordinary landfill, and say, okay, I'll split 30% of that off because you're composting. I'm not quite sure how I could do that.
Well, again,
you're going to have a deficit somewhere. Okay.
Well, that's the question to answer. Is the savings? How much is the savings going to be, and what's it actually going to cost for either more equipment, or more people on the street, but ideally you want to do it in one pass. Can that happen with the equipment? Make it in, for instance, you have trash trucks, and now you have two passes. Trash truck, recycling truck. Ideally, that it should go in the recycling truck. Again, only 2 passes.
Right.
You're going to have a fixed cost with the manpower. It's just a matter of, can you get the equipment to make it still be 2 passes? Because you're going to have a savings in the landfill cost. That's a given. You'll have a savings per ton of about 10, 12, 14 bucks.
That's on the other side.
Yeah.
You still have the upfront cost of collection. That has to be paid.
Right.
Salaries have to be paid. Gasoline has to be paid.
Yeah.
Then hopefully the tipping fee will be less at the other end.
Well, not hopefully it is.
Well,
It's
still got to collect it.
no, I know, but still, if you go to landfill, it's $35, $37. It's only 60% at a facility. So you have that savings, and that's
Well, that savings being left offset.
That's right.
It's something,
yeah. But the
I like what you're doing here. I
oh yeah,
it's
but
very
the folks
interesting.
indicated they would be willing to pay a little more, perhaps. It all depends on what the study finds out. If you do a big study for the city, whatever would come out.
Excuse me, Ray, we also have a couple questions
Oh,
here
yeah.
and here. We're beginning to wrap up as well.
Yeah.
If we could go back, I don't know if we can go back to the slide or if one of you has the hard copy printout of it, but approximately how many pounds per week?
Was it 8 per person?
8 pounds per person?
8 pounds a person, right. It's
Okay.
about 30%. That's the national average. It's about 30% of the waste stream is an organic, compostable kind of material. Yeah.
So 8 times 16 weeks times 60 participants, so we could begin to get the gross weight of
Yeah.
how many pounds of garbage was diverted, and so
Yeah,
if you
well,
did it.
that is right there. That's your weight per week, gross weight. It came from the scale readings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So your best weeks, you're up to 450 pounds
Yeah.
you're collecting.
Yeah.
Again,
But that was
it's
60
summertime, it's
60 people.
watermelon, it's corn, it changes, of course, but week to week, month to month, the national average is about 30% of the waste stream. And it came to be almost identical here. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have another comment here.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, we're like right now looking at single stream garbage,
Yes.
and we're working with
Recycling,
other
single stream recycling.
MRF.
The MRF. Yeah.
MRF. How do you see this coinciding and meshing with the MRF system?
Well, ideally, a MRF would be located up there in Industrial Park next door. But again, the key, I think, would be to have the pass be one pass, and then just drop off the organics one place and the recyclables the other place.
So it would seem that if we are interested in doing something like this, that we should be in the process of talking about it. Because I expect that we'll be buying new equipment for the MRF system. And so that would seem that then you can buy equipment that can potentially
I was
do
talking
this.
to.
Because I don't, how can you divert, you can divert recyclables and cans, but when you start talking about organics, it's a different system. I mean, it's harder to divert organics, squishy things that have been sitting there for a week. So I'm just wondering if this sort of discussion is going on in the garbage discussion.
You're looking at me like.
Well, I mean, you guys are in.
Again, we're trying to work towards single stream.
Right.
We would not be in the business of doing this. We got out of the business of collecting garbage and recyclables many years ago. We contracted with Athens Hockey Recycling, the nonprofit. They're in the midst of splitting off from the waste district, as you know. I realize everybody else who was on the
Well,
steering committee.
I guess my question is that we want to, if we are, I think that we're hearing from people is that this is a good idea, that we want to add this into the discussion topics when we're discussing all the Murphiness. So,
And my guess as well too that this will likely need to be discussed at further length with more committee meetings.
This should be a committee meeting.
Correct.
This is not-
I agree. I agree.
We're really far outside
Right.
the rules right now.
Correct. Yeah. And so I do want to thank you for your efforts and hard work, since I know you were doing the heavy lifting and lugging the cans and making the runs, so to pick everything up and take care of business. So I appreciate the presentation and the
Okay.
data collection as well. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'll get
sure.
with, Ed Newman is on that committee, one of the sustainability committee. He was talking about getting into collecting at the restaurants downtown. They're all their glass, and having the organics be part of that process as well. But there's a lot of ways to do this, and like in anything else that kind of evolves, you know, there'll be things that people discover that work, and things that don't work, systems, ideas, methods. And so it's just a matter of, you know, continually to pursue it. And so, again, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, and I was just going to add, my guess is that you'll be willing to participate in more discussions and helping
Right.
us move forward and
Yeah,
proceeding
well,
with this.
one thought I had perhaps was that you'd want to have somebody else do it. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes the most sense to have it be done efficiently. You know, haulers haul, collectors collect, and on the processor, I process. I make the compost. That's the way. That's the most efficient way to do this here in Columbus, Ohio, or New York.
Thank you.
Is that make it efficient?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you again
Yeah,
for
sure.
the presentation. It's good to finally get our heads wrapped around,
Okay.
you know, the whole composting side of things. So thank you very much.
Any other announcements or other business? I know we might need to acknowledge any desire for committee meetings,
I'd like one.
and that's planning and development. I'm guessing finance.
Finance and personnel. Please. That's
Any-
a standing committee.
Any other meetings? At this moment, we need to acknowledge opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on this agenda. So is there anyone wishing to speak? Please walk up to the podium and, okay, does not appear to be any. We do have a large number of participants in the crowd this evening, so we'll make sure we offer plenty of time afterwards for question and answer. We are now adjourned at 8:07 p.m. Thank you.